Halo Infinite is a dead game. Or is it? Well, that's the question that I'd like to answer today. I'll be using every possible statistic at my disposal to try and theorise the most accurate possible player count for the game. I'll be providing several arguments and counter-arguments for both sides of the debate, deciding whether or not the game is truly dead. But anyway, before we begin, if you do enjoy today's video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you're new here. I really do appreciate it, and it really does help the channel out. Without wasting any more of your time, let's jump straight in. The first thing we'll be looking at is the Steam charts, as that's usually the first thing everyone sort of looks at and the resource that everyone uses to try and determine what the player numbers are. When the game had launched and it was at its peak, the player count was sitting at roughly 250,000. And we know at launch Halo Infinite had over 20 million players, meaning it was the most successful Halo launch. And this would of course be expected. It's available on more platforms, it's free to play, and gaming as a whole is just more popular nowadays. But we know that Steam roughly made up 10% of the player base. Now right now it is currently 8:30 in the afternoon here in the UK, and Infinite on Steam is sitting at round about 2,600 players, with a 24-hour peak of roughly 5,000. Now based on the logic of Steam making up 10% of the player base at launch, it would be safe to assume that Infinite is sitting at roughly 50,000 players. However, I don't really think this is true, but more on that in a bit. I think the Steam player base and PC player base in general dropped much harder than the console player base did, due to the fact that there was much more performance issues and disadvantages with playing on PC. A big factor was the fact that there was no red reticle, so it really deterred a lot of people from playing on PC, and then as well a lot of performance issues depending on your build or depending on what settings you're using in the game, and that deterred a lot of people. This caused other people to either move to console or drop the game entirely. At the end of the day, we know Halo is Xbox's flagship IP, and most of its hardcore fans remain on console. Speaking of console, there's a few things we can look at to maybe get a rough guess at how Infinite is performing on Xbox. If I was to go to the top 3 games list on Xbox, Halo Infinite is really low down, which could seem really worrying, except I also don't think this is the best statistic to look at. And the reason I say this is quite simple. Fall Guys is currently sitting at the #1 spot. I know Fall Guys is a very popular game, but I don't believe it's more popular than Call of Duty Warzone or Fortnite or Apex Legends. So I don't really know if this means that these games have the most players, whatever's higher has more players, or if it's just something that has sparked more recent interest. Some games like Fall Guys might have had a boost recently due to having new seasons, whereas Halo's interest has just dwindled, hence the reason it is just sort of stagnated or gone down. You can just look at top games in general when going to the shop, and here I think Infinite might be even lower. But again, I don't know if this is really based on like the actual overall player count. So as a whole, it seems like these Xbox lists might be inaccurate. That is just a theory. I just really don't see Fall Guys being the most popular game on the market right now. Again, I'm not trying to undermine that game's success, I just know it isn't more popular than some of these other large titles. We can also have a look at YouTube to try and determine how high the interest is in Halo Infinite right now. I know this doesn't necessarily compare to its player count, but I'm going to assume that most of the people that are still watching Halo related videos have some level of interest in the game and might still play it regularly, so I still think it's a good factor to look at. Now when you search Halo Infinite, most of the videos that do pop up are pretty much news oriented ones. They're usually pretty much all commentary focused. They have much more of a focus on the commentary than they do the gameplay, which is vastly different compared to other live service titles like Call of Duty or Fortnite, which usually have a lot of gameplay focused videos. There's definitely a vast range in view count, with some getting 50,000, some getting 19,000, and a bunch with less or more. But if we go over to the official Halo YouTube channel and look at how the Forge Fundamentals videos are performing, well, they've done pretty well. The first one, showcasing building, is on over 168,000, the second one is on over 79,000, and the newest one, which was uploaded 3 days ago, is on 37,000. I will reiterate again, this doesn't equate to player count, but it seems like the interest overall is pretty high. You can check a lot of the comments on these videos, and some of them might be negative. You probably will have a bunch of comments of people saying that the game's dead or they stopped playing. That's entirely possible. But from when I was watching the Forge Fundamental streams live, there was quite a few people tuning in, and it seemed like everyone was praising it and were going on about how excited they were. Of course, again, these people might not even be playing the game right now, they might just be looking forward to Forge, and they might jump back in when that happens. But I still think it's a pretty good statistic to look at. It's pretty good sort of to get an idea of how many people are still interested in the game. If it still has high interest, then can it really be considered dead? But on the other side of the spectrum, when it comes to content creation, we could also look at Twitch and how Halo is performing on there. And honestly, it's pretty embarrassing. It's currently sitting at a pitifully low 675 viewers. Just like the player count, this does change throughout the day. Depending who's streaming or what time it's being streamed, the viewer count will change. But it's very rare that it goes any higher than maybe 2,000, unless of course there's a Halo Championship event on. Recently we had the HCS Orlando event, and this was relatively popular, causing the Halo category to do extremely well, having over 100,000 viewers at some point. Which leads me to believe that those 100,000 people are still somewhat interested. Whenever I posted about this on Twitter, I pretty much had everyone telling me, well, it's only been watched for the drops. And yeah, I'd be inclined to believe that, but if you're only watching for the drops, then I'm going to assume that you still care about the game, you care enough to watch for these Twitch drops, which you're then probably going to use. And that led to me doing some digging. In fact, that alone is what inspired this video. Some of you may be familiar with the Halo Infinite Silex Guide. It is a third-party tool that I've used for several videos covering cosmetic leaks. It details all the cosmetics, and one thing you might not know is the fact that it actually tells you how popular certain items are, and tells you the percentage of players using it. The Twitch drop that was available at the HCS Orlando event was the Gladiator's Edge Commando. There was also the Sidekick, but this wasn't the first time that this was available, so I'm not really considering this as a new item. And there was also a weapon charm, but again, not really going to look at that one. Backtracking a little bit, we know that the event had over 100,000 viewers. They weren't all necessarily on the main Halo stream at the same time. A lot of people were watching partnered streamers or just other streams in general. But I'm going to go with the assumption that there was at least 100,000 people, not all watching at the same time, but that have watched the finals and claimed that Gladiator's Edge Commando. And if we check on the Silex guide, roughly 7% of recent players have equipped this Gladiator's Edge skin. So based on this logic, and I know it's a bit of a reach, that 7% should be roughly 100,000 players. Not everyone that claimed the drop would have equipped it, that is entirely possible too, but let's just entertain the idea that I am right here. If we go off the fact that everyone who said that this event only did well because of the Twitch drops, which again is probably the truth, if we go with that assumption and just assume that everyone that watched equipped this drop, then we know that that 7% is roughly 100,000 players. So if 100,000 is 7%, and I've done my math right, then that means 100% is roughly 1.4 million, which could mean the game is at 1.4 million regular players. I don't mean daily players, because I do think daily and regular players is a completely different number. It might be 1.4 on like a monthly basis, maybe being a little bit higher or a little bit lower depending on certain circumstances. And of course this assumption is relying on a lot of factors that might not necessarily be super accurate. We are relying on a third-party software here, and relying on the fact that that 7% is 100,000 players, that everyone that watched this drop, everyone that watched for this drop did claim this reward and then equipped it. I don't necessarily mean to say that the player base definitely is that high, but I do think that it is still at a relatively high number. The fact that Halo does still rack in some form of viewership on YouTube, and there is still a lot of interest in these championship events. I mean, usually tickets completely sell out to attend them in person, so you've got to just assume that those people still care about the game. And there is one final factor that I think is very important to determine whether or not the game is truly dead, and that's simply how long it takes to get into a match. Almost every single playlist on Halo Infinite requires about a 20 to 40 second wait time on average. Sometimes it's shorter, sometimes it's a bit longer. There is a few playlists that are usually a bit over this, mostly ranked doubles. I don't think ranked doubles is very popular at all, and sometimes that can have up to a 4-minute wait time, but the vast majority of playlists are much lower. Big Team Battle is usually like 20 seconds. Team Slayer can sometimes be like 14 seconds to actually find a game. And if I can find a game that quickly, then is it really dead? That shows that the player count must still be somewhat high, whether that's like high hundreds of thousands, maybe even low millions. Even if the player count is at this 1.4 million that I'm estimating, that is still more than a 90% decrease from launch, which is really bad for a live service title, for a AAA title of this scale. That is really embarrassing. That still means like maybe 18 to 19 million players have stopped playing the game. So although the player count might still very much be pretty high, it's still a huge decrease, and that cannot be explained enough. But this doesn't mean that the game is dead. If I can still find games really quickly, then the game really isn't dead. But I do definitely believe that it is a dying one. If 343 cannot get their act together soon enough, then it's entirely possible that most people will stop playing the game. But there's good things to come. We know that 343 has recently had a huge change in terms of management, and I can imagine that this can only be a beneficial thing going forward. There's a new head of live service, and although yes, his take about Halo being a competitive game at its core is a very odd one, it seems like he knows how to handle a live service game. The Season 3 roadmap was disappointing. I'm not going to try and sugarcoat that, it really was disappointing. But Forge looks amazing, and some of the new content that's coming with the Winter Update and with Season 3 is going to be super fun. And going even further than that, we know Tatanka is coming eventually, and I do think that is going to give this game such a massive resurgence. All of the big streamers that were requesting it since before launch, like Dr. Disrespect or Tim the Tapman, they have huge audiences, and when they all start streaming this game and playing this game regularly, which when the Battle Royale comes out, it's entirely possible they will. That is literally free promotion for 343, and that will probably boost the player count massively. Backtracking a little bit to Forge, I think Forge is going to do a very good job at maintaining its current player base, and it gives people something to do pretty much all the time. The possibilities of Forge with Halo Infinite truly will be infinite. So in conclusion, I believe at a bare minimum, Halo Infinite is currently sitting around about 30 to 50,000 average players, with a potential maximum height of roughly 1.4 million. Since there is no way to view the actual player count, all we can do is speculate. I don't think the game's dead. I think, quite frankly, I can still find games very quickly. I can still find matches quickly. There's high interest in stuff like the HCS events. There's still interest in news-related content. There's still thousands of people sometimes watching some of my shop videos, and I think if you care enough about the shop, then you probably still care about the game. But let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Do you believe Infinite's a dead game? Do you believe it's a dying one? Or do you think it still very much has a future? I truly believe Halo isn't going anywhere anytime soon, and Halo Infinite definitely isn't dead yet. But I'd love to hear what you all think. Anyway, if you did enjoy, make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you're new here. As I said at the beginning of the video, I really do appreciate it, and it really does help the channel out. Cheers for watching, and I'll catch you all in the next one.